Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Daily Fantasy Digest Podcast, the all-inclusive podcast where we talk all things fantasy sports to help give you an edge. I am your host, Joe Bewer, and today I am joined by none other than Chris Alaperto, a.k.a. JuanBondDFS from FantasyCPR and WiseTake. Just to give a big background on Chris, he writes articles, PGA and MLB centered, value play articles for Fantasy CPR, as well as PGA, FanDuel picks, and some power rankings. And over on WiseTake, writes cash game articles for MLB and does the PGA Wise Stream podcast over on WiseTake. You can find him on Twitter at JuanBondDFS. Go ahead and give him a follow and show him some love. But we're going to go ahead and break down this May 24th 14-game massive Friday slate. We're going to be going ahead and giving you our favorite pitching options, cash and GPP, as well as some bat stacks and value plays that you're not going to want to miss. So go ahead and kick back and let's jump right into this. Chris, glad to have you on the podcast today. How's it going?
Hey, good. Not bad. Glad to be here, man.
So I want to jump right into this, and I want to know where are you at tonight as far as pitchers? Because I think pitching is going to be really crucial on this slate. Bat stacks are always important, but nailing down two good pitchers to kind of be the foundation for the slate is going to be pretty crucial. So who are you on tonight?
Well, obviously I started with Blake Snell, and we got a lot of good pitchers on this slate, so I quickly kind of realized I don't need to pay that much. And then I kind of went to Robbie Ray. He's massive strikeout upside always. He's pitching really good this year as opposed to like last year when he was getting shelled all the time. But San Francisco's been really bad offensively, so I like Ray. And then I'm also considering Jose Berrios. He's a much better pitcher at home, and he's coming off a bad game. And then obviously another poor offense I like to target with pitchers is Detroit, so I have a lot of interest in Noah Syndergaard as well. The lower tier pitching today is not very tantalizing to me at all. I like a couple of these guys in the middle. And in order to get some more bats in GPP play, I'm probably going to consider some guys like San Diego will be Joey Lucchesi at Toronto. And then Griffin Canning, the rookie for the Angels. He's got kind of a tough matchup against Texas, but there's a lot of strikeouts to be had there as well, and he's been pitching well for a young guy. So I think Cannon's going to be my SP2 with either Berrios or Syndergaard. So
question for you. If we just started looking at the top of this, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 guys over 10K. That's a lot of guys over 10K. I want to kind of look at, do you think as a GPP play, do you think Shane Bieber's a little too overpriced?
Yeah, I do. His ownership's going to be way down. I think, are people going to chase that 15 strike game? I don't know. I'm not. That was Baltimore. This is Tampa Bay. I think this is way too much against an offense like Tampa Bay.
Yeah, I agree personally as well. And I think the same for Chris Sale. I just don't see it, especially going up against Houston in Houston. I see Chris Sale as like probably one of the biggest GPP plays if you're going to go that high for GPP just to get some sort of contrarian. Because I just don't see Chris Sale doing any damage against Houston tomorrow. That's why I'm big as my SP1 in Robbie Ray. San Francisco, very pitcher-friendly ballpark, and they've been absolutely on the coldest streak possible. The only hitter that I can see putting any sort of damage on them might be Pablo Sandoval. Might cause some sort of issue for Robbie Ray, but I don't see that posing an issue as well. I see a big game from Ray here at 10-9. And I think that locking him in at SP1 is just going to be able to be a great foundation for cash games. Jose Berrios, I'm one of the biggest Jose Berrios fader out there. Not a fan. I think he's a little overrated, and for the price, coming off 2 bad games, one away, and then that LA game where he played the Angels at home, -0.3, gave up five runs, 12 hits in 5 innings. It was just a little disheartening for me. I know we talked a little bit before this, just going down into the lower range of pitchers, just because for those GPP plays, you're going to want to be a little contrarian here. We mentioned Pablo Lopez going up against Washington. It's a very tough matchup, especially being away. Coming off a pretty good game of 32 fantasy points, how do you think he stacks up in this game at 7.5K?
I kind of like Lopez. Look, with all these bats, I mean, we got Coors Field in a game where we might see 25 runs. You know, there's just so many good hitting spots tonight. Yeah, we're gonna have to go cheap somewhere. I like Lopez. I don't think even with Turner back, like Washington still struggles offensively. It seems for the most part. They got Matt Adams back too. I mean, that's home run power, but that's not much to worry about. Lopez hasn't been great, like we know. Kind of weird though, because he got shelled by the Mets, at home. I'm sorry, in New York, and then was really against them at home. So far he's been a better pitcher at home, and this game is on the road, so that's scary as well.
Yeah, and I think the only other low price pitcher I would end up going is Reynaldo Lopez. I know the Twins are hot, but Lopez has flashed some pretty high K upside this season and hasn't really is only gone negative one time, two times this whole season. So and has a 42.5 fantasy point game just a few games ago. Followed it up with a 30 almost a 30 point fantasy game. I think at 7.1K, it's a pretty good GPP like punt play almost that you could go with just to be able to free up at least some extra money for those bats. If you agree with that.
Yeah, I can see that. I would rather take a chance. Well, I shouldn't say that. I guess looking around at this price point, it's hard to disagree.
I
It's
mean,
hard to
I would
disagree.
go with McGowan to be honest, going up against Miami, absolutely terrible team. But I don't have confidence that I'm going to get 6 innings out of McGowan.
No.
And if I was to, I think that would be a solid play if he was guaranteed 6 innings at 7K. Flashed some pretty decent upside when he was, for the Cubs when he pitched against the Cubs a few games ago. And I could see him being some sort of a breakout pitcher if he's allowed to get a little more innings. So I think for pitchers, if we kind of look through, you're either two high price guys today, like two really high price guys today, or you're a high in a middle tier. I think the play for me is going to be Robbie Ray and either Lucchesi or Canning. For me, what do you want today as far as locking in two guys?
For me, I'm a Minnesota homer, so I'm a Barrios like truther, so I have to deal with that on a start to start basis. I've at least accepted the fact that he's a way better pitcher at home, even though, like you said, he wasn't good in his last start at home. But I mean, that was his only one. That was his worst one. I think this is a good bounce back spot for him um, against Chicago. So I like if you put him and Thor in Syndergaard, that leaves you with about 3,700 per player, a little bit over 3,700 per player. I think that's doable for cash. It's not ideal, but I'm thinking about that. I think after it's all said and done, I'm going to end up with Syndergaard and Canning for my GPP pitchers.
So I think that narrowing down the pitchers for cash games, we can pretty much say that Barrios or Ray are going to be your two SP1s you can probably go with. And then SP2, you can either throw in Thor and just scrape the barrel for bats, or put Lucchesi or Canning in there and get yourself a few hundred more dollars. Would you agree?
Yeah, and it's not always the best strategy to spend up for two pitchers on DK. It's really tough to get bats, but there might be enough value today to make it work.
Yeah. So let's jump after all those pitchers. Let's jump into these bat stacks. I'm on a few heavy bat stacks for me. The one that stands out the most for me is going to be I'm a Coors Field fader, to be honest. I'm not a big fan of Coors. Um, I don't have too much confidence in I don't know. John Means could throw something. I don't know. It's just something where they're just so high priced all the time. It's 5K for the top for each of the core guys. So I like to spend my money elsewhere. I'm a big fan of the Angels tomorrow. I think that Drew Smiley is one of the most terrible pitchers I've seen in a long time. And I think that the Angels at home going up against Smiley is going to just create some insane upside. I'm a big fan of Tommy La Stella tomorrow. Mike Trout, Howie Kendrick, people like that I think are going to be a little bit overlooked. I think the stack is going to be overlooked as well. I know those players just, Calhoun, Fletcher, they're just low tier, low priced guys that I think are just going to be able to flash some pretty good upside for this stack.
You know what? I'll add right to that because I will be mentioning that a little bit in my value plays. I will have a value plays article tomorrow on fantasycpr.com, so don't miss that. It's just top MLB DFS value plays is what it's called. So, but anyway, I'm going to talk about Zach Cozart tomorrow because he's basically a free spot. He's 2,300 on DK. And in a slate like this where we got these pitchers that we want to pay up for, you might need a guy like that if you want one of them 5,000, one or two of them $5,000
Right.
plus just bomb hitters that you can lock in.
And
But
I think that you might be able to also, just, from the notes that I've written down, the value plays that I have, Albert Pujols is only 3,800 at first base. I think
yep,
that's largely too cheap for a hitter like Pujols going up against Smiley. I think he's almost a plug-and play at first base if you're really trying to spend up for some outfielders.
yeah, if you're stacking, I definitely say don't leave Pujols out and don't leave Lucroy out either at 3,800 as well at catcher. Um, if as long as he's back there, we get a lineup, he should be. But yeah, another cheap source of value. I wouldn't. I mean, it's going to be tough to pay up for Sanchez with all these pitchers today.
Yeah, but I think you're going to have to. I think if you're going to stack Angels, you're going to have to put Trout in there. You're going to have to find the value to pay 5,800 for Trout. It's going to be tough. I don't know.
With Cozart though, and you get up that wraparound. I think Cozart makes all that pretty easy.
Yeah, and Fletcher's only 3,600 as well. So you could do Fletcher, Cozart, Pujols, and Trout and have a 4-man stack for the Angels going up against Smiley at a pretty cheap price.
Yep, I like that.
I think that's an absolute phenomenal stack. Another stack I want to talk about, and I think Coors is going to be the most popular. Let's just get that out of the way first. I just want to skip that.
We don't even need to talk about it.
I know I'm a big fan of the Mets and the Dodgers tomorrow. I think the Mets going up against Soto provides some insane value, just some like low tier scraping the barrel value that you can get, just going up against an absolute terrible pitcher. And then the Dodgers, surprisingly, Corey Seager's price just doesn't get adjusted ever, and he's so cheap. Like it just doesn't make any sense to me because he's such a great player, but only 4,200. I mean, he was 4,200. He's a $4,600 player, if I'm just being honest.
You know what? He's a 2,900 on FanDuel. You don't play there, but that is insanely low. He made my article on FanDuel today. He's 2,900. I can't believe it. Yeah, Corey Seager. Yeah, I was going to ask if you're reading my article here because we're on the same page, but I'll let you continue.
Yeah. We talked about the Angels. That's like the core cash game stack. I think that a lot of people are going to be off of because of Coors. And I think that the Angels are going to be one to stack. But the Dodgers are a close second. And I think that Seager, provides some crazy upside. If you wanted to stack the Dodgers, you could go Seager. Bellinger is insane tomorrow, 5,900 on DK. It's just ungodly. But for a guy who's hitting 394 with 17 homers, it's kind of expected. And that's just not something that you're going to be able to get away from. I would, if I'm also stacking the Dodgers, I'd like Jock Peterson, who's 5,300, but it's just not going to happen with the amount of players that you're going to have in your lineup. So if he plays, I love Anthony Verdugo at 4,300. I think that's a solid play. 4,300 seems fair. So I'm a big fan of Seager. I'm a big fan of Verdugo. And then I'm also a big fan of Chris Taylor, who honestly hits righties better than he hits lefties. Usually hits bottom in the barrel, and it's only 3,400 on DK. Seems like an absolute lock at second base and outfield eligible.
Yeah, no, I like all of that. And then don't forget Muncy too. Muncy, I think we got. It was going to be Musgrove, but now I'm seeing they're having an opener, something called Du Rapau, and then they have a lefty coming in after.
Yeah, so I think if you stack some righties like Justin Turner, Kike, and Chris Taylor and get past the first 2 innings, I think you're going to be in a better position, especially with how cheap they are. Kike Hernandez is only 3,500 on DK, and Chris Taylor is only 3,400. It just doesn't make any sense to me. And then I'm assuming they'll probably play Barnes tomorrow, which is just going to create more value as well.
Yeah, nope, I agree with that.
So I think those are my 2 top stacks, a little bit pricey, but I do want to go ahead and talk about the Mets going up against Greg Soto, who's absolutely atrocious. If we just throw that out there really quick, I'm a big fan of a few guys. Obviously, I'm a big fan of Pete Alonso tomorrow. If I could lock somebody in, Pete Alonso would be him, 5,300, just absolutely insane this entire season. But it just seems like It's a little pricey, seeing as how many guys are 5,000 plus tonight on this slate. So if we're just looking for some value, I'm a big fan of JD Davis, only 4,200. Seems like a great play. And I think that tomorrow especially usually hits three spot in the lineup, and I think that JD Davis is going to be a one-off that I'm going to want to fit into my lineup if you're going to go that route of stacking the Mets.
Yeah, I'm going to use Mets value tomorrow for sure. I like the spot. I mean, they're going to roll out 8 right-handed batters tomorrow, obviously, which is sweet.
I mean,
well, 9.
yeah, Ahmed
Well, so they're
Rosario.
left-handed.
I
Yeah, they're
love
going to be 1 through
Rosario.
8.
I love them all. I mean, it's just, I think that, if you're going to stack a big team tomorrow, like the Angels or the Dodgers, who are my two, like, low-key, under-the-radar players or stacks besides Course, I think that throwing in some Mets players tomorrow is just going to only help you, and it's not going to hurt you because of how cheap they actually are.
Right. Yeah, and a couple guys that you didn't mention in this Met stack that I got my eye on. I'm actually writing up Carlos Gomez for DK tomorrow. He hit that big 3-run bomb.
Yep.
And he's a little spark plug. I mean, he's a pain in the butt. I remember when he was here in Minnesota and went to Milwaukee. He's been around a long time, so he's going to get some playing time with Nimmo and Conforto out.
And not to mention that he has pretty high stolen base upside.
Yep.
He's pretty quick, so it's an easy 5 points right there. And another player that I really like, if you're looking for a solid catcher, Wilson Ramos is incredible. And I think that 3,900 for him is a little too soft for the matchup. And he's been absolutely on a tear lately. So I think that Wilson Ramos, JD Davis, Ahmed Rosario, and Carlos Gomez are as another stack that you could go with if you wanted some cheaper options. And if you wanted to play a one-off from the Angels game as well, I think that wouldn't be a bad spot.
Yep, I agree. I like the 4, 5, 6 with Alonso, Ramos, Gomez expected there, projected is kind of where I'm looking for GPP probably, and then using the one-offs for value.
So any surprising value plays that really stick out to you tomorrow, other than the ones that we talked about? Any like added ones that you think are just insane?
Yeah, I got a stack I'm looking at. They're struggling, and now Chris Davis is out, but I like Oakland tomorrow. Wade LeBlanc, I'm going to disagree with what you said about Drew Smyly being the worst pitcher on the slate, because Wade LeBlanc is actually the worst pitcher on the slate. Yeah, Marcus Semien, 4K leading off. I know he's had an up and down year, but he just stole a base too the other night. So, and then you got Matt Chapman's got power, 4,300. Matt Olson hits lefties well. Don't overlook him. He's not quite a reverse splits guy per se, but I mean, he still does hit lefties well. And then depending on who they start in the outfield, you get that multi-position eligibility with Pinder, second base. You can play him at second base. He's 3,800. Piscotty's 37. Mark Canha will probably start. He's another option. But
I also just
got torched by the Twins.
So. I also just noticed, I'm looking through, I'm writing down my top value plays. For me, like the number one value play of the night was Chris Taylor on the Dodgers stack. But I just noticed that Raymond Lorano is 3,500 on DK, and that is just absolutely absurd for the player with the upside that he has, hitting 230 with 5 homers. And he's had 7 or more DK fantasy points in 3 of the last 5 games. So it seems like a no-brainer to me to kind of plug and play him in if you're going to go one-offs from Oakland.
Yeah, no, I like that a lot. I agree 100%.
And Carlos Gomez is only 3,500.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, if there's any other ones I'm missing.
No, that's basically, we got them all. And that's another team that, because they lost Chris Davis, could get overlooked pretty well.
Yeah,
and
agreed.
They could rip Wade LeBlanc pretty easily. So,
alrighty, so let's recap this really quick. Pitchers, we're gonna go Berrios and Robbie Ray for SP1 in cash games, and we're gonna go with Canning or Lucchesi for GPPs, and then potentially Syndergaard as well, if you'd rather go Syndergaard than one of the SP1s. For stacking tomorrow, we're gonna go with the Angels as well as the Dodgers as the primary stacks, and then kind of taper off with Oakland, and kind of, get some value plays from there, as well as the Mets going up against Greg Soto. So before we go ahead and like end this breakdown, I want to get on this podcast. We do a thing called the Dinger of the Day. Kind of go ahead and take your pick as to who you think is going to hit a homer, and let's see what the outcome is when this slate starts tomorrow.
You're gonna make me go first?
You want me to go first?
Yeah, because I didn't get a chance to think about it.
All right, my Dinger of the Day. I'm gonna do a high price guy that I think has got the most upside. I'm gonna go with Mike Trout. I think that it's a easy. For me, it's a no brainer. I think Mike Trout's gonna hit one at least within the first 4 innings. I see it just being a blowout. And then if I'm going to go with somebody a little on the lower end as far as price, I'm going to go with J.D. Davis on the Mets at 4,200. Okay. So those are going to be my two. But Mike Trout's my main one. I think it's an auto lock to plug and play Mike Trout tomorrow, even though he's 5,800.
That's sweet. And I didn't want to take him from you. That's why I let you go first. All right. So since we're going to do it that way, I'll do two. And I will go with an obvious one. And I will go with a not so obvious one. I'm going to take Trevor Story to hit a homer tomorrow off Means in probably the first inning in his first at bat. And then I got a guy who's struggling here. And I thought about writing him up, but first base is just so deep tomorrow that I just don't see any scenario where I can play him. We talked about Albert Pujols earlier at 3,800.
Yep.
We got Chris Davis and Coors at 3,600 against Jeff Hoffman. We got Kendrys Morales at 3,200. So I'll just take him here to hit a bomb because I'm not going to play him, and it'll piss me off when he does. So Christian Walker is going to get off his slump and hit a bomb off Drew Pomeranz tomorrow night in San Francisco.
Love it. I absolutely love it. So there you go. If you're listening, those are our two dinger calls. We're gonna lock in Mike Trout from the Angels and Trevor Story as the two high-priced players. Christian Walker, and then go ahead and lock in J.D. Davis if you have the cap space. I think all these players are in fantastic spots, and I just want to go ahead and thank Chris for coming on the podcast. I appreciate him coming, and I appreciate you coming and breaking down this massive slate with me. I really appreciate it. You can go ahead and find Chris at JuanBondDFS on Twitter. Go ahead and give him a follow. Chris, thank you very much for coming on the podcast. I really appreciate it, man.
Yeah, thanks, brother. It was a good time. No problem.
Alrighty, and if you're on this, if you're listening on YouTube, go ahead and subscribe and like. And if you're on Apple Podcasts, just subscribe so you can keep up to date with all the videos. And like I said, go ahead and check out Chris's articles on FantasyCPR and WiseTake, and give him a follow on Twitter, as well as us at FantasyDigest_. And yeah, until next time, peace.